Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Soulfire Sunday. We're on episode 3 right now, guys.
Yeah.
So first of all, congratulations, because we've all stuck with it. It's a bit of a commitment. We're all here 3 weeks in a row. So I'm here with Scott Milne, I have BB Pro, and we're streaming on his page as well, and Paulie O'Byrne, and he has the 1 in 5 page, founder of 1 in 5. So we're streaming on their pages as well as the Sex and Suicide podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Evans, and for this evening, we're going to get into panic attacks and talk about sort of the symptoms, what you feel when you lead up to a panic attack, as well as how to get through it and how to work through that. But first and foremost, Paulie and I have had an interesting week, especially Paulie. But we're going to do a little bit of a talk about stigma, because you've been through a bit of a rough go.
I have, yeah. It's been a tough week, heavy week, for sure.
Yeah, it's been a heavy week for you. Do you want to explain to everyone what kind of happened as best you can?
Yeah, definitely. It hurts my heart to say it out loud every time I say it, but I lost a really good buddy this week to suicide, or we found out this week that he passed away by suicide, and it's tough to accept, for sure. And I think that just in hearing everything that's going on this week with some people talking that stigma is kind of what killed him, and unfortunately I had to go to another funeral because of stigma. And
yeah,
I always say I'm sick of going to funerals because of stigma.
Right.
And I think that stigma is the killer. I don't think that Carl wanted to die. I think that he just didn't have another option because he felt stigmatized, because people put a label on him.
What label do you think they put on him?
That he was a junkie, or that he was an alcoholic, and I never looked at him that way. I looked at him as a great guy. He was an awesome friend. He was compassionate. He was caring. He was lovable. He loved his car. That's one thing. Like, if you're telling him that he's a junkie and he has a G35, like, what kind of junkie is that?
Right,
you know?
right.
I just think that we need to eliminate that word junkie and really look after who he was as a person, right? And I think that he was a genuine soul that's going to be missed sorely. I miss him like crazy, and I just don't want to go to any more funerals. And I mean, I'll do whatever I can. I'll do this 15-week program for 15 years.
Yeah, I know.
Until we eliminate this stigma. Because, like we were just saying, like, I think putting labels on people, that's like being a bully, right?
Yeah.
We label, when kids label other kids in school, that's being bullied.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that as an adult, or we do that in a medical kind of facility. It's called prescription, right?
Right,
and why do we do that, right? Like,
It's so disrespectful.
It is.
Absolutely.
It's crazy disrespectful.
It's judgmental, right? That's what I don't like.
I'm just, I'm sad, I'm hurt, I'm angry. I'll get through it. I definitely will, because I got support. Like,
we love
you
you,
guys,
buddy.
right?
Yeah.
But it's heavy, and I think I'll miss him forever.
Yeah.
I think I definitely will miss him forever. So.
Well, we're both here for you. We're sorry that you went through everything that you've gone through. But when Paulie talks about the stigma with alcoholism, or being, labeled a junkie for having a addiction to some kind of drug, it's the same thing with mental illness and the stigma. I mean, sometimes it's even harder. I mean, for me, it was easier for me to admit that I was doing blow than it was to admit that I was on an anti-anxiety medication at one point in time, because of the stigma attached to mental health issues.
Right.
So, stigma in itself is a terrible thing, and these labels have to go. We just have to. Paulie has a great thing that he says, which is,
I'm sick of going to funerals.
No, that's not a great thing.
It's a terrible thing.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing. That you're just in recovery in general.
I'm in recovery, and I'm healing from life.
Healing, yeah. Right? So we're all, I think in a way, we're all kind of in recovery.
That's nice way to put it.
So whatever you're going through, you're recovering from something.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest message for anyone watching, for any Carl's friends or anyone else that knew him, that, like, if you ever feel like that, like you're not alone, that you can reach out. And I took a lot of blame on myself this week, especially because I thought, why didn't he just reach out? He knows what I do. Like, why didn't he reach out? And I think the reason he didn't reach out is because of stigma.
Yeah.
Because of embarrassment.
Because of embarrassment, shame, and guilt. And he didn't want to say, I fucked up again. And it's not that he fucked up again. He was an addict doing what an addict does. I did the same thing. I've relapsed like hundreds of times. And some people call it stubborn, and I call it resilient, because I just keep going on.
You learn something from it every time.
Every single time, right? So,
okay.
You know, you're not alone. You're definitely not alone. And
we're here. We're here. We're all in recovery of some sort, right? So, whether it's mental health, whether it's addiction, whatever that may be. So we're here for you, buddy.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, we love you, pal. We love you. And my experience with stigma was last weekend. I had, and I'll explain to you guys, especially people that are new to the Sex and Suicide podcast. You might think just by looking at the name, it's edgy. It's something that is promoting things that are sometimes and quite often looked at by the public eye in a negative context. I mean, how do you put a positive spin on suicide? It's really hard to do. The idea behind this is that we are trying to break the stigma and get people talking about it. It's not that we're encouraging it by any means. And so I have a buddy, his name's Chucky. He supports the podcast, he supports what we're doing, and he's an MMA fighter. And he fought in a King of the Cage tournament last Saturday. And he reached out to me on Facebook and he said, hey, Shawn, I really like what you're doing. You and your boys are doing fantastic things. I want to support you, and I want to put your logo on my banner. I've got a fight for King of the Cage in Michigan. And I thought, you know what, this is fucking fantastic, because whether you don't know this, I mean, the story behind the suicide portion in Sex and Suicide is my best buddy a year and a half ago, who also lived here in this house with me, died by suicide. And he was also a cage fighter once upon a time. He fought in a cage fight that put him into a coma. This was a while ago. I think it was sort of, probably at this point it would have been about 10 years ago. But at that point he kind of was diagnosed as having a brain injury. So by Chucky saying he was going to put Sex and Suicide right in front of these fighters, these MMA fighters, I felt closer to Dan, was his name, than I felt in a long time. I felt like finally we're kind of, I feel close to him, because this is where his brain injury happened. He was a diehard jiu-jitsu fighter and teacher. He taught people. And towards the end, he struggled with addiction and he struggled with mental health issues. And part of which was caused by him being put into a coma by the other guy he was fighting. So anyways, last Saturday in Michigan, Chucky had our banner out, and whoever was responsible at King of the Cage, or I don't know who it was, I've tried to reach out to them very publicly on Twitter. They don't have a contact address on their webpage, so I've tried to ask for an explanation. But they covered it up. They asked Chucky to cover it up before he went out with tape. So our logo was completely covered, which is what we're trying to beat here, because that's just like everyone else turning a blind eye. You can fucking cover up the word suicide all you want, but it doesn't mean it's not happening in the world. So we might as well stick it in people's faces and address the situation. And so to me, that was heartbreaking. I spent that night, I burst into tears, because I felt like I couldn't help but feel all these feelings that I felt when I lost my buddy, and how just picturing them putting tape over it was like silencing my friend, you know? It was really tough. And so King of the Cage, if you're watching this, I'm going to be directing this towards you, but that's the explanation behind it. So I'm really not appreciative of the fact that you taped over it. You could have reached out to me and asked, or you could have responded when I tried to contact you. But that's the story behind it. This whole podcast that was started is dedicated to the gentleman that I lost by suicide. So we all want to get rid of the stigma, and I understand that, I'm kind of new to this. I understand there might be rules and regulations when it comes to putting words like sex and suicide in the forefront of the public eye. But at the same time, these are words that exist in Webster's dictionary. You can look them up at any time.
Yeah.
So
I just think with that...
Yeah, what's your view on it? Because Paulie has... How many times have you attempted suicide?
Well, I've been in the hospital 3 times. For an attempt, but I've attempted it a few times and not gone to the hospital. So
right.
I'm probably like up at 6 or 7 times trying to take my own life.
And does the name sex and suicide, do you find it offensive?
I don't think that reading the word suicide puts it into my brain that I'm going to complete suicide.
Right,
I
and you
think
shouldn't.
The word suicide is, it can be used as like a motivator to not end your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So at least when I was struggling, I didn't know what depression was, and I was struggling with depression. And I just needed to know what the hell it was.
Yeah,
right.
Like, why am I feeling this way?
Why am I feeling this way? I feel broken, right? And I think by that guy, like, it pisses me off.
I know it does, man. I know.
It rattles me up.
I know.
That someone would do that. For them taping over that is them saying, we have no people in King the Cage that have mental illness or addiction.
Right. Yeah.
And that's bullshit.
That's complete bullshit.
Because we know that 1 in 5 people
Yep.
deal with mental illness, and it's way worse in the States. And if this is in the States, maybe there's no fighters in that cage, but there's people in that audience.
Absolutely, 100%.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe you could pay attention to that poster and say, hey,
what is this?
Maybe I'll check those guys out on Sunday. And
maybe I'll tune in.
You just shut them up. King of the Cage just shut them up so that we can't have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell King of the Cage.
Tell him whatever you want.
To take the fucking tape off. Really?
Yeah.
Because if you think that there's no one in King of the Cage that has a mental illness or is struggling, then you're fucking high.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think I get passionate.
And we're here for that too. If you are high, you can talk to us. Yeah,
we're here for that. I get passionate about that. I can't believe they did that to you.
Yeah, to us, man, to us. But thank you.
It's ignorance in general. That's what pisses me off, right?
Yeah.
Like, do your due diligence, reach out, find out what it's all about before you make a decision to shut it down, right?
Well, the thing is that
you're an idiot.
Yeah, and you have two guys. First of all, you want to talk about sex. You still parade women around holding the round signs up in bikinis. Yeah, so you're basically using sex to sell right there.
Right.
And then you want to talk about suicide. You've got two guys going in. I mean, you think of the movie Suicide Squad. They're basically going in there to... These guys are going in there to beat the shit out of each other and potentially hurt each other.
Right.
So what else do you want? If 2 words can describe what's going on in there...
Sex and suicide.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Right? And if you think about all the names of some of the companies that are okay... like being advertised, you have companies like Affliction. Does that not speak about mental health?
Right.
I'm afflicted.
Right.
Yeah, right. You know, and these are certain things that are allowed now.
Or tap out. You're surrendering.
Yeah.
Like you're surrendering to the mental illness, or you're surrendering to the disease of addiction, saying, hey, I need help.
All these things can be turned around in any way that you want.
Right. It's perspective, and I think that King of the Cage is very narrow-minded, and not that I call it anyone a King of the Cage, because I'm just a 150-pound little skinny guy. But
we're not talking about the fighters. We're just talking about, like, I love Chucky. Chucky obviously competed in this thing, but it broke my heart of thinking about this guy's supposed to be focusing on a fight, and you're making him tape over something,
right? Yeah.
Or someone on his team has to tape over something. Like that's heartbreaking to me.
Yeah, it's gutless.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's what happened last weekend. We lost someone to suicide. We had people taping over suicide. It was not a good week for us for Stigma. So we wanted to kind of address that now. And the other thing I want to address before we get into panic attacks while we're on the topic, I had a good friend of mine reach out today who's had a tough time with not being able to stop drinking and has a bit of a... He basically has admitted to me that he's, and we're not using... We hate the labels, but he said, I got to accept the fact I'm an alcoholic. And... I've been sober for almost a year and a half now, but it was because of losing my best buddy and watching his life be destroyed by alcohol and drugs, and my life was going down the same path, that I decided, and I made that promise with him. So that was enough for me. But for you guys who have been to rehab and these programs, what advice would you give? I mean, I already said I'd go to an AA meeting with him, but what advice or for anyone else that's kind of going through this issue that hasn't reached out, what advice do we have for them from 2 people that have kind of...
I think when it came down to it, I've been to 7 treatment centers and 6 detox centers, and I've been to, I think, over 1,000 AA meetings, and people still say, well, what did you do? And I think my answer now is whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Like, whatever it takes to get sober, because I've seen the blessings, and they work when you're sober.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen, like, connections made, like, amazing lifelong connections made sober. And like the thing